Today I'm joined by Thresette Briggs of Performance 3. Tricetta, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Karen. Thank you for the invite. I'm certainly happy to be here with the Leadership Lab and looking forward to a great conversation.
It's my pleasure. Let's dive into it, shall we? Can you share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Well, in terms of background, I spent probably over 15 years in corporate America. And the types of environments I was in were environments that were in transformation in a lot of different ways. They were either bankruptcy, had to turn around quickly, big lawsuits, had to overcome that quickly, and other types of things that were just really kind of chaotic and transformational. And so I learned to be in that environment and what it required to be able to overcome and get back to performance health as quickly as possible. I used to think I was cursed and why couldn't I get in a company that was okay? And then you quickly realize that no company is okay and there's always something. So I began to embrace those types of things. So I've been in corporate America from internship all the way up to senior level positions. When I decided to launch my business, I had been through a couple of different organizations and saw, reorgs and other things happening that just really weren't things that I felt were stable and things that I really felt I could do long term, always having this feeling of not really being in a place where you could really do what you wanted to do. I also did not necessarily see opportunities to be my authentic self. I felt in most cases that I was about 30% of myself in the organization. And when you leave about 70% of yourself at the door, it's really hard to be high performing. And that was very important to me. And I saw a lot of other people not be able to do that as well. And so when I left corporate America to start my business, that was really something I wanted to do was help build high performing leaders and close that gap between what they needed and what the organization needed so that it can be the most effective as possible. And what does that high performance mean to all of them, the individuals and the companies?
I love that. That's a great foundation to bring you to where you are today. So you talked about being your authentic self. What does that look like for you?
Well, for me, it looks like being able to be myself in all the situations I am in, to be able to use my gifts and my strengths in everything that I'm part of. I have my business, of course, and I am able to use those gifts and strengths there because I've really learned what they are and understood how they can best be applicable and how I can most effectively help the organizations and people and leaders I'm working with, as well as what it is that I need, right? So I've learned that that all balances much more effectively, and I didn't feel like I had that balance between the two when I was in corporate America. I think that those are key things for me.
And do you find that the same for your clients? Is that what you help them with, is really leading from their authentic self?
It really is. It really is. And there's so many different examples. For example, I had a client who was just really, she had been in an organization for quite some time, and she was up to a very senior level position. And the president of that organization position came up, and we were talking about it, and she said, I thought about that. I don't think I'll go for it though. I said, why not? And she said, because, I've got these various issues, the things we talked about. I said, yes, I know the things we talked about. I said, and so what makes that a reason that you wouldn't apply for this role? And so she kind of had in her mindset why she couldn't. And I said, why don't you take another look at that through a different lens and think about how all those things you consider issues are learnings and things that can help you and strengthen you for being the best candidate for that role. And so she said, I hadn't thought of it that way. And so when she did, we started looking at what is the story that she wanted to tell and how could she contribute what she had learned through those lessons to be the most effective candidate. And she got that role. So it's very exciting that I'm able to help people do that kind of thing. And it is a purpose thing. It's also a looking at what you've really done and shifting your mindset so that you can think about it differently and make it much more powerful.
So it sounds like, or some of the work that you do is some internal reflection and also changing some of the narrative, the internal stories that a person might have when approaching a particular role or opportunity. Is that correct?
It's absolutely a lot of that because it starts right there. I mean, my dad used to say, my dad was from Hope, Arkansas, and my mother was from Dover, Oklahoma. And there was a lot of little interesting sayings there. One of the things my dad used to say to me is, get your mind right, girl. And I used to think as a little girl, I'm like, is something wrong with my mind? And and as I got older, I understood what he meant. It starts right here. And then it goes into your heart, and then it goes out into the world, into your actions. And so if your mind is right, your actions and your heart will follow, and you'll be doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So, yes, it is a lot of reflective work and looking at your mindset first. Mhm.
I love that. If we shift gears a little bit and we take a look at your business, where are you focusing your energy these days?
On sustainability. I've always done that actually. It's not a new focus necessarily. It is where I've always been focused on sustaining actions and behaviors that make leaders much more effective. Because a lot of times people will ask, can you do some training? And I say, well, let's talk about what's you're experiencing, what's really happening in your organization. And is training the solution? And if it is, then how do we do that? Because I don't do check the box training. I don't want to. I don't think it's value added for them. I don't think it's value added for me or the leaders that are going to be part of that experience. So it is much more about making sure that there is sustainability in what you've learned and how do you carry that forward so that not only you can be a great leader, you can build great leaders. And that's the essence of what we do is build high performing leaders. And so we have our 6 services where we help to do that. And we also have our coaching program that we've got that's patented by the US Patent and Trademark Office because I felt that strongly about it. And I don't think that, I think as coaches, we have we have a responsibility to make sure that we are helping people in the right way. I mean, there's organizations that do that, and each individual has to take that on and make sure that they are part of making sure that happens.
Right, it goes back to that not checking the box of the one size fits all model, being a little more fluid in your approach. If you had to pick one thing that's really working well for you in your business, what would that be?
I think one of the, and this goes beyond coaching, certainly. First of all, let me say this. Coaching, I believe, is the glue that helps all the other competencies that leaders build stay, make them stick. What's working well, I think, when you do that, when you use the coaching for that purpose, is that there are clear expectations up front about what coaching really is and what it isn't. Because there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who are hanging their shingles out, and a lot of people jumped into the coaching arena. They took this 6-week course and they think, they're going to coach. And that doesn't mean they can't coach. There's a lot of nuances and other things involved in coaching that are so important. When I started thinking about being and calling myself a true coach, I reached back. I thought it was very important to reach back to people that I'd worked with over the years and ask them, what do you think about me being a coach? And they said, well, what do you think that means? And I told them what I thought it means and what I'd researched it to be. And they said, you've been doing that all along. That's who you are. And it even goes back to when I was young. I think it's just in my DNA, Karen, because when I was young, my mother said that I was always one to ask a lot of powerful questions. There was one time when one of my aunts was having a baby, and my brother and sister and I were a little bit curious. And we asked, what's in Auntie's stomach? What's going on with her stomach? My mother said she's having a baby. And my brother and sister said, okay. And I said, okay, well then how's the baby going to get out of her stomach? And, is Auntie going to be okay? And I started asking all these questions. So I got it honest, I guess. It's just in my DNA to ask deeper questions to understand and help a person understand themselves as well.
And a lot of curiosity, it sounds like, as well.
A lot of it. Sometimes, you got in trouble for that when you're asking too many questions. It's like, you need to stop asking questions. You're asking too many. And as a young person, you had to stop at a certain point or you got in trouble. So, at least in the culture I was in,
But it served you well in later years.
it really did. It's just who I am. So, I think that works well is the clear expectations and then understanding truly what coaching is and what it isn't. And being intentional about using certain skill sets. I think there's coaching skill sets that we see that ICF says, that John Maxwell says, that I'm a certified member of that team, and other places, and they're kind of consistent. One of them that just is most powerful for me is active listening, is really listening to understand, not my turn to talk.
Yes, so key and probably not as well practiced as it could be by a lot of people.
Absolutely. It has served me well. I'm sure you probably feel the same, right?
Yes, yes, it does. If you're to look back, what's one piece of advice you'd give your younger self as a leader?
Wow. One piece of advice I'd say is you're enough. You're enough. I am from Wichita, Kansas. That's where my parents met and eventually settled after my dad traveled from being in the Navy. And I kind of had this complex about Wichita, Kansas, and you get the jokes about Dorothy and Toto and, other things. And I kind of, I think, had that as a barrier, as if I wasn't quite at the level of certain people. And I thought, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being from Wichita, Kansas. It's a thriving metropolis. It's the largest city in Kansas. And that's where I got my roots and where I got to be strong. And so I really own that now. And so I think telling myself, you are enough wherever you're from, whatever your background was, you are absolutely enough.
So true, so true. I think more of us need to really lean into that. Not necessarily just where you're from, but where you are today with what you have in terms of skills, position, whatever that may look like. We are all enough as we are and who we are today.
Absolutely agreed.
True. Trisetta, what's one of your biggest wins or proudest moments in your journey in entrepreneurship and leadership?
I'd say one of the proudest moments is staying the course. Because when I left corporate America the first time, Karen, I got this huge client, international client. I helped them to turn their business around within a year because if we didn't turn it around, they were going to get cut off by their parent company. And I got all sorts of awards, and the team got awards, and the division got awards. And they asked me to come on as a employee, as a leader, and I did. And I stayed there for a year or so. And then I went back into another place in corporate America because I had really kind of just run the course there. One of the biggest things I'm proud of is that after 2 more years in corporate America, I made that leap again to be a consultant, a business owner, an entrepreneur, because that's really where I wanted to be. And my dad had been an entrepreneur after 12 years working in an aircraft factory in my hometown. And so I think that re-entering the entrepreneurial space and being brave enough to do that and figuring out what I needed to do to sustain it over time was one of my biggest accomplishments. Because 2 years in, I was ready to quit because it's hard, as you know. And instead of doing that, I talked to people who had been doing it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to rub against them and get their secret sauce. And what you find out is that it's not necessarily a secret sauce. It is focus, it is determination, it is purpose, it is perseverance, it is grit. And they helped me understand their true story, the ups and downs and the risks they took. And it really inspired me to keep going. And so I have people who are leaders in the different spaces that I'm in, the organizations that I'm part of, like the National Association of Women Business Owners, where I get the honor to serve on the national board, and next year we'll be stepping into the chair role. And other organizations like the Great Lakes Women's Business Council, it's just a lot of different spaces that I'm in that have helped me to sustain being a business owner and being the leader that I am, that I feel I am today. So I would say those are the things I'm very proud of. Mhm.
And rightly so. That's a huge accomplishment, not going into entrepreneurship once, but twice, and really sustaining yourself and running the course. And as you mentioned, it is a tough go, especially in the early years. It does take a while to get things off the ground, and there is a lot of perseverance and maybe a few tears shed, and
A lot of tears shed.
but it's worth it. It's worth it. Like you said, you're finding yourself, your true authentic self, and your place, and I would gather, your mission and your purpose in life.
And can I say one more thing about purpose? I found that one thing that really was helpful too is when you understand what your purpose is, you don't have FOMO. You know, when we first start out and we can burn ourselves out, and I think that's a little bit of what I was experiencing in that first 2 years. I was trying to be everything and do everything and be everywhere, and that's just not possible. And so when I talked to a couple of those folks I mentioned, we talked about what's my core and what do I really, really want to do and what brings me joy and all those different types of things. And that helped me to center myself and get focused on where I really needed to be and who I really needed to be connecting with and what spaces I needed to be in. And when I started doing that, I didn't have FOMO, like I was missing out on something and I wasn't all over the place. And if I wasn't supposed to be somewhere, I was okay with it and I didn't feel like I missed out. I was where I needed to be. And if I was in that space and I wasn't supposed to be, I was doing a disservice to myself and someone else whose space it was. So I found that that was really, really important for me to learn.
That's really interesting. Recognizing and having that self-awareness to realize that you're not in a space where you're meant to be. What did that feel like for you, or what comes up for you in those moments? When in the moments where you think, oh, this isn't for me, this doesn't feel right, maybe this isn't part of where I'm supposed to be. How do you recognize that? Like, what comes up for you?
That's a great question. I look at, is this a space that's going to allow me to use those gifts and strengths I talked about? Is it really that space? It might be something good to do. It might be nice, might be a great event or great opportunity. Is it truly something that I am meant to do? And does it align with those gifts, strengths, and those core values that I have? Is that something that I can do there? And if it's not, I have learned to step aside. I've even told in the past a client, after being asked to put in a proposal, I really had something just it wasn't settling in my spirit. And I had to sleep on it. And then I called him back and I said, I don't think that this is something that I should do. I said, I'm going to step aside to honor you and whoever else's assignment this really is. And it was respected. And that's what I think people should do. And I do understand that hunger when you're first trying to get opportunities and when you're first starting. Long term, you really do have to make sure that you're in the right place because now I'm reaping the rewards. You know, people say, I've been watching you. I know you do this. I know you do that. And I'm impressed by this. And I really see that. They see you. They see you for what you are truly gifted and strengthened in. And that is where you want to be. I think that's going to be something that helps you be sustainable for your business as well as the others that you can help do the same.
Yeah, so true and so key. And I think a reframe is necessary in those moments, in that you're not saying no to an opportunity. You're saying yes to something else that you can't yet see that might be in better alignment with where you want to go and who you are. And I think for a lot of people, and certainly for myself, when I say no or when something doesn't happen for me in the way I think it should happen is a lack of recognition that there's something better along the way and something that is more in alignment with what I'm meant to do. And that's hard to do, especially in the early years. But like you said, as you grow, it becomes a little easier to really stick to your lane. And you
Absolutely. I have learned to, the Jim Collins book, say no to the good so you can say yes to the great.
Trissetta, you've learned so much from your journey. What's next for you, and what are you excited about creating?
I am excited about creating tools that help leaders sustain actions and behaviors they've learned during the journey with us. Now, believe I've mentioned, we have a national leadership development firm, and coaching is one of the services because I think that is a glue that helps the others to be more effective. So it's what are the tools and things that are going to help them sustain those actions and behaviors they are truly going to need in times of stress and pressure, etc., especially now when leaders need to be the absolute strongest leaders they need to be. There's always something that's kicking it up a notch for leaders, right? To be better leaders. And so what is that they need to be better at and more effective in? So I'm looking at, digital and electronic tools to do that. I just finished the NASDAQ Milestone Circles program, the 12-week cohort that allowed me to really look at what my milestone is for doing that. And so I'm working on what that tool looks like and trying to make that come to reality, hopefully by Q2 of next year. And so that is what my team and I are working on.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And you have AI and all those other things that you're trying to figure out. Yes, I need to know about it. Do I need to be an expert in it? Not necessarily. I do need to understand how I can leverage it for my business and the people that I work with. It's very important to just be aware and not just diving into something because, oh, this is the next trend. It's how is it strategically going to apply to what your goals are and how your business can be better and continuously improve.
Definitely. Yeah, take a more measured approach to including new technology, whatever it may be. Today it's AI, tomorrow will be something else. But having a
Exactly.
more strategic, thoughtful approach to that. Before we wrap up, I'd love to leave our listeners with one key takeaway. What would be one piece of advice you'd give to leaders navigating change today?
One key thing I believe is I would recommend this, that leaders understand how they deal with change first, because it's inevitable and it is something that not all of us really can do well. And if we're afraid of it, if we don't know how it makes us respond, if we don't understand our triggers about it, then we will probably not do so well in helping others through change, which is what leaders do. So you've got to understand what you believe about change. Now, I often tell people that, especially when I hear people say people don't like change, and I kind of fundamentally disagree. I think people like change is just how it impacts them. If I win the lottery and I win $20 million, that is a change, right? I love it. I love it. Now, if I have that $20 million and a lot of relatives come out of the woodwork and a lot of people come out who help me invest and something goes wrong and I buy too many things and I don't invest properly and I lose that $20 million, that's also a change. Do I like that one? Absolutely not. So it's how it impacts you. So what do you do to get out in front of that and understand how change happens or works for you and what you need to do it more effectively? It's not just about what's in it for you, it's what can it do for you? What can it do for others that you impact?
I love that distinction. I would have said nobody likes change, but I love the way you made the distinction between everyone likes change. It's just the impact. What kind of change are we talking about? Thank you so much for sharing your story today, Trissetta. I really love the insights that you dropped. Where can listeners find you online?
They can find me in a couple of different places. First of all, on LinkedIn, and I can guarantee you won't find another Tresetta on LinkedIn. So, so definitely look for me there. I also have a Facebook business page, Performance 3 LLC. That's at Best Performance 3, I believe, is the way it is for Facebook. And then I'm also on Instagram, Tresetta_P3. So those are the key places to find me, and I look forward to connecting.
Perfect. We'll drop those links in the show notes.
I would also say one more thing. I am hoping to launch a book next year. That is my goal, to finish it. I am in several books, and one key one is called Sacred Promise, an anthology, and it's a book compilation. And I have a story in it about your voice and the story that I share about absolutely finding my voice after almost losing it physically. That is a book that I highly encourage you to get. It's got wonderful stories. My story is in there. And so I would love to have you purchase that book and to hear your feedback.
We'll definitely put the link for that book in the notes below. And Tresetta, thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories and your insight with me here on the Leadership Lab podcast.
You're very welcome, Karen. And thanks again for the invite. Happy holidays. And I look forward to hearing from everyone and to hearing about their wonderful stories.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending your time with me today on the Leadership Lab podcast. My hope is that this conversation sparked a new perspective or reinforced something you already knew. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity and intention.